To most of the galaxy, Earth was a myth, a cautionary tale the elder species whispered to keep the younger ones obedient. Never provoke primitives, they'd say. The last ones built gods in metal and sent them to die. But no one had seen the gods return, not until now. The orbital sentinels of the Galactic Coalition drifted above the neutral zone on Sector 4K Ares Prime. Standard patrol. No anomalies, just radio silence and stars. Until something cold cracked through the void. It didn't send a message. It didn't respond to hails. It just emerged. A ripple of space tore itself open like bruised flesh, and a form drifted out, slow, ancient, and monstrous. 10 kilometers of jagged, scorched metal cloaked in drifting debris, its hull stitched with a language no one had spoken in half a millennium. Human standard. The Coalition war room lit up in panic. Emergency alerts blared across 12 systems. Commanders in 5 quadrants screamed conflicting orders. None of it mattered. The ship wasn't attacking. It was watching. And somehow, it was alive. High Admiral Threx of the Jalari Armada, bred for war and victory, watched in stunned silence as the object refused scans. Shielding that had no logic, heat signatures colder than death, and worse. There was no crew aboard. Or maybe there was. And that thought chilled him more than empty corridors. He opened a private channel to Central Command, claws tapping against the table. "We have a relic," he rasped. "Unregistered human design. Power output unmeasurable. It's not moving." "What is it?" the voice on the other end asked. Threx's voice dropped. "It's not what... it's who." The ship's name blinked across their monitors, scratched into the outer hull, pulsing with eerie energy like a heartbeat restarting in hell. HSC Leviathan, Earth-class supercarrier. The name was a curse, a ghost. This ship was part of the final wave during the human extinction conflict, the one humanity lost. All known records said it was destroyed in the Antares collapse. But here it was, crawling back through the cosmos like a wounded beast that refused to die. The Coalition's inner circle convened in chaos. Every empire, every species, every politician who once celebrated the eradication of the terrors from Terra now sat pale-faced, staring at a vessel that should not exist. But that wasn't the worst part. The ship spoke. Not in words, not in frequencies. In silence. Every listening post across the sector blacked out simultaneously. Stars flickered. Gravity fluxed unnaturally. Across the Coalition, children screamed in their sleep, veterans wept without knowing why, and psychics fell into seizures whispering the same phrase. "She's awake." No weapons fired, no declarations made. Just presence, the kind of presence that made even machines shudder in fear. They sent a fleet to intercept. 30 ships, armed with the finest quantum warheads and energy shields known to the modern galaxy. None returned. No debris, no trace, just the Leviathan drifting forward, slow as a funeral procession, toward Coalition space. Aboard the flagship Virex Eternal, General Keld turned to his advisors. "What are our options?" he demanded. No one answered. Because there were no options. You can't negotiate with the dead. And this ship? It wasn't here to bargain. It was here to remember. And when humans remember, everything burns. In the darkest corners of the galactic map, where stars were too old to burn, and time forgot its name, the Leviathan drifted. She wasn't moving fast. She didn't need to. Each passing hour brought more Coalition fleets into position, more desperate comms flying through encrypted networks, more debates between alien dignitaries that ended with nothing but terror-drenched silence. No one wanted to be the first to fire. because deep down, they remembered. The last war against humanity wasn't just brutal, it was unnatural. Species that had warred for centuries had united for the first time in recorded history, not out of alliance, but fear. Fear of Earth's final scream, fear of machines that bled, fear of soldiers who kept fighting long after death, fear of the human soul, twisted and bent into something terrifyingly unbreakable. And now, one of their monsters was back. Not a fleet, not a battalion, just one. And that was enough. Lieutenant Gron of the Syreth Watch, stationed aboard the observation vessel Telvin's Eye, watched the Leviathan through a reinforced quantum scope. His large obsidian eyes scanned the details again and again, but nothing made sense. "It's like it's healing," he whispered. The Leviathan's hull, once jagged and torn, now slowly pulsed with an unnatural glow. Segments that had been hollowed out by age or combat were slowly sealing shut. Not through any known technology, but by what looked disturbingly like organic regrowth. It was metal, but it breathed. Rust flaked off like old scabs. Scorch marks peeled like dead skin. The ship wasn't just powered. It was alive. Grain tapped the comm. "Command, this is Watchpoint 3, confirming surface regeneration. Recommend evacuation from central perimeter." "Negative," Command responded. "Maintain position. We need more data." Gron exhaled. "You're going to get a body count." But even he didn't understand how right he was. Inside the Coalition's war room on Virex Prime, the mood had shifted from denial to desperation. Generals, diplomats, and science lords argued over the same questions on loop. What powers the ship? Who is piloting it? Is this a rogue AI? Is it a final human weapon? Why now? None of them had answers. But there was one voice that hadn't spoken yet. Archivist Vorn. Old, decrepit, considered irrelevant in modern council decisions. A relic of the pre-human war era, he had survived the Antares collapse and lived to tell about it. Most saw him as mad. But when the Leviathan appeared, he was summoned without hesitation. He stepped forward slowly, leaning on his cane of carved obsidian, and faced the holographic projection of the ship. "She remembers," he whispered. The room went still. "Excuse me?" asked a Valari admiral. Vorn didn't blink. The Leviathan wasn't just a supercarrier. She was Earth's answer to extinction. During the final days, human minds were uploaded into neural cores. Soldiers, engineers, tacticians, not AI, not programming, people, bound in steel, infused into the ship's will. "A crew of ghosts?" one voice mocked. Vorn turned to him, eyes cold. "Number worse. A crew of vengeful survivors, bound to a ship built for planetary extermination. And you know what makes them unstoppable?" Silence. "They lost everything, and they remember all of it." The silence in the room was like frost. Someone dropped a data slate. No one picked it up. On board the Leviathan, there were no crew signals, no life signs. But if anyone had stepped inside, they'd have felt it, the pressure in the air. The low hum that wasn't from engines but something more primal, like a sleeping animal exhaling in its dreams. Inside the main bridge, flickers of human shadows moved across dead screens. Images of old crew members, parents, children, lovers, flickered for microseconds, then vanished like echoes. But in the center of it all, wrapped in vines of wire and bone-colored conduit, sat a chair. Empty. Waiting. Above it, a name slowly etched itself into the glass of the observation dome, like invisible fingers writing on ice. Captain Jonah Ward. dead 632 years, buried with Earth. And yet, the ship remembered him, and soon so would the galaxy. The Coalition made their move. 3 flagships, 55 cruisers, and hundreds of smaller support craft surrounded the Leviathan in a massive containment ring. A display of dominance, meant to intimidate, meant to remind the galaxy that the old powers were gone and order had been restored. They broadcast a universal message. Unidentified vessel, you are violating Coalition sovereign space. Power down your systems and prepare for boarding. Silence. Then, for the first time, the Leviathan responded. But not in voice. She opened her memory. Across every Coalition vessel, screens crackled to life unprompted. Audio feeds hijacked. Visual feeds overridden. Crew members screamed as images forced their way into their eyes and ears. They saw Earth's final hours. Not the official version. The real one. Children melting under plasma rains. Sky cities turned to blackened glass. Human refugees trying to flee into broken ships while alien drones fired into escape pods. Entire continents crumbling into oceans. And worst of all, the silence of betrayal. The moment the Coalition had promised peace and launched the final protocol anyway. Tears, screams, begging, none of it saved them. And now the Leviathan was giving it back. All of it. Captain Vrosh of the flagship Sunfire Covenant tried to shut down the feed. His techs clawed at their controls, bleeding from the eyes, some vomiting, others collapsing. The ship's AI tried to reboot the system and was ripped apart from the inside. The Leviathan didn't hack. She possessed. Vrosh stumbled to the window just in time to see the supercarrier's core start to glow. Not a weapon, a memory engine. It pulsed once, and every ship within the first containment ring just stopped. Engines dead, shields off. No life signs, no alarms, just silence. Across 200 million kilometers, not a single whisper remained. Then she drifted forward again. Slow, purposeful, like a widow through a graveyard. Back on Virex Prime, panic turned to paralysis. High Chancellor Veld rose from his obsidian throne, lips trembling. We must attack. All fleets, all weapons, now. No, Vorn said. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. You dare! I remember Antares, Vorn growled. You want to throw fleets? That's exactly what Earth's last leaders thought before they woke the Leviathan. It took 3 moons to slow her down. You know how they finally stopped her? Veld said nothing. They didn't. She stopped herself. In the deep, inside the Leviathan's old crew quarters, still sealed, still frozen in time, a child's drawing was pinned to a wall. Crude crayon art, a picture of Earth, a smiling family, a sun. It fluttered in a breeze that shouldn't exist. And somewhere deeper in the ship, a heartbeat echoed. Not mechanical, human, faint, but waking. Aboard the last standing listening post at Gammafold, Ensign Rollo whispered into the black void. She's not just a weapon. She's a tomb. His commander looked at him, confused. What did you say? She's full of the dead, but they're not resting. They're remembering. And that was worse, because a weapon can be disarmed. But memory? Memory burns. They called it Operation Glass Tomb. 3 hours after the Leviathan's broadcast, the memory purge. The High Command of the Galactic Coalition finally did what it always promised to do when diplomacy failed. It brought everything. 12 sector fleets mobilized from opposite quadrants, entire dreadnought formations pulled from border defenses, Stealth bombers, AI-controlled gravity lances, antimatter torpedoes. Every instrument of death modern civilization had built over the last 600 years now drifted towards the same point in space. All pointed at one ship. The Leviathan didn't move, didn't power up weapons, didn't respond, didn't need to. She just floated, impossibly calm, as if the war she remembered wasn't over, as if this wasn't a second confrontation, just the continuation of the first one. Fleet Marshal Corrin stood aboard the Coalition command vessel Verdict Ascending, surrounded by his tactical AI, admirals, and a wall of high-powered monitors tracking the Leviathan's position. He'd fought in 3 major campaigns across the Rift systems. He wasn't known for hesitation. And yet his hand hovered over the authorization panel longer than anyone expected. "Marshal," one of the AI prodded, voice smooth, sterile. "Weapons are locked, firing arcs set, awaiting confirmation." Corrin stared out the window. The ship didn't look like it should be feared. It was aged, scarred, more tomb than warship. But his stomach wouldn't stop twisting. "Fire everything," he said finally. The command echoed, and the galaxy answered. The first wave of fire came fast. Over 600 antimatter shells screamed through space, trailing violet sparks of charged death. Plasma slugs the size of cruisers followed seconds later, weaving paths lit by tactical AI. Next came the heavy stuff. Dimensional rippers, black hole spike warheads, fusion clouds designed to consume entire moons in seconds. They threw everything at the Leviathan. In the war room, advisors began breathing again, confident in their numbers, their power. Some even smiled. But Corrin didn't. He kept watching, waiting. Then the feed from the Verdict Ascending froze. Static. Then screams, then nothing. Just the Leviathan. Still there. Still whole. Not even a scratch. The survivors, few and lucky, reported madness. Not weapons, not shields. Something else. Some said the projectiles never hit, that they blinked away inches before impact. Others claimed to see illusions, entire fleets appearing in their periphery, bleeding from their eyes, hearing whispers in their own voice. Some described seeing themselves aboard the Leviathan's bridge, watching their own fleets die from within. One pilot swore he saw his mother, dead 30 years, standing on the outer hull, hand pressed to the glass. The tech core tried to explain it. Data corruption, residual echo feedback from ancient human tech, sensory hallucinations caused by advanced neural interference. But deep down, they all knew. This wasn't science, it was memory warfare. The Leviathan didn't just remember what was done to her, she made others remember too. And when guilt takes the wheel, not even war machines can fight straight. At Coalition Command, internal fractures formed like hairline cracks in the face of calm. The Jalari wanted retreat. The Valerians demanded a second strike. The Bornak urged a ceasefire and envoy mission, a gesture of surrender. No one could agree, until the human. Yes, one human still lived. Or something close, Dale Harker, 81 years old. Born long after Earth fell, in a hidden exile colony that barely survived collapse. A genetic throwback from the wrong side of history, as the Council used to call it. But today they called him something else. Translator. He stood alone in the observation deck, flanked by guards, staring at the ship none of them could understand. "I told you this would happen," he muttered. "You told us the Leviathan was a myth," the Chancellor snapped. "No," Harker said. "I said she was sleeping." There was a beat of silence. "What does she want?" someone asked. He turned to face them. She wants us to feel what Earth felt, to see what she saw, to suffer the silence she was buried in. The Chancellor stepped forward. So what do we do? Harker just shook his head. You don't do anything to her. You apologize, and you hope she lets you walk away. The room erupted into outrage, threats, denials, but Karan stayed quiet, because he had seen it. He'd felt it, and he understood. This wasn't a war. It was judgment. Back on the Leviathan, power surged through forgotten conduits. Entire decks that had been sealed for centuries hissed open with bursts of frost and steam. Lights flickered to life, illuminating corridors lined with empty armor suits, each marked with a name, each bearing a rank from a military that no longer existed. In the heart of the Leviathan's neural core, something pulsed. A memory, a voice. Male, cold, familiar. I remember every scream, every betrayal, every planet we lost. You killed our children. You burned our oceans. You buried us in silence. And now, I will teach you the sound of regret. The voice didn't come through any channel. It came directly into their heads. Across entire sectors, millions dropped to their knees in pain, bleeding from the nose. Some simply went mad. Ships malfunctioned. Satellites fell. And in the darkness of space, the Leviathan finally turned toward the nearest coalition world. Ivaris 7. Population, 9.2 billion. Once a key manufacturing hub during the human wars, now a resort planet, undefended, because no one thought Earth would ever return. Korin saw the trajectory. His blood ran cold. He didn't even wait for the council. He ordered a fleet jump to intercept. 600 vessels, newer models, reinforced against psychotronic interference, AI hardened, human tuned, the best they had. And still, it wouldn't be enough. On Ivaris 7, they saw her. A black speck against the sky, blocking the sun as she approached upper orbit. For the first time in their pampered lives, the civilians saw real war. Terror alerts went out. Civil defense sirens blared for the first time in 400 years. But nothing could prepare them. The Leviathan didn't launch missiles. She didn't fire beams. She did something far worse. She remembered the planet, and made it remember her. The ground beneath cities began to glitch, visually. Concrete flickered like unstable code. Skyscrapers shimmered, then twisted into versions from 600 years ago. Bombed, ruined, burning. Children screamed. Elderly dropped in shock. For 10 minutes, Ivaris 7 was Earth. And then she stopped. Just like that. The illusion faded. But it was enough. Tens of thousands dead from sheer psychic trauma. Heart attacks, seizures, mass panic. And the Leviathan? She left, didn't even touch the surface. Because pain, she knew now, was more efficient than fire. Back in Coalition space, the last card was finally drawn. The Null Protocol, an outlawed contingency weapon, buried beneath decades of treaties, hidden by design, forbidden by reason. Not a weapon in the traditional sense. A device built by the Coalition in case of AI transcendence, something that could erase digital minds across sectors. A weapon meant to shut down anything not entirely organic. They believed the Leviathan still ran on a form of AI. And they were wrong. But they triggered it anyway. Across 50 systems, neural waves pulsed. Every unshielded AI screamed and died instantly. Coalition fleets went dark. Hospitals lost power. Navigation collapsed. Even planetary infrastructure burned. And the Leviathan? She paused. For 3 seconds. And then laughed. No voice, no sound, just every comm system across 3 sectors crackling with the same human chuckle. Because she wasn't AI, she was human. Or at least what was left of humanity, digitized, hardened, embittered, and buried. And now, reborn. The null protocol hadn't killed her. It had only made her angry. On the verdict ascending, Corin sat slumped against the bulkhead. Smoke filled the air, systems failing. Most of his bridge crew dead. And in the middle of the chaos, one word repeated from the comms, over and over. A whisper, a plea, a prophecy. Jonah Ward, the captain, the ghost, the soul of the Leviathan, the man who died with Earth and refused to stay dead. And somewhere inside the ship, he was waking up. Not metaphorically, literally. His body rebuilt cell by cell inside a stasis core, surrounded by memory-infused tech that had preserved his mind. He hadn't just uploaded. He had waited. Waited for the galaxy to forget. Waited for the coalition to believe it had won. Waited to come back. And the silence the galaxy now bowed to? It wasn't reverence, it was fear. Because they knew. Jonah Ward was coming. And this time, he wasn't alone. He woke to a sound that wasn't sound. Not breathing, not humming. Not the buzz of monitors or the soft hiss of machinery. It was deeper. Memory. It vibrated through the core of him. Not skin, not flesh, not even bone, but something older. A feeling buried beneath the war. The years, the silence. Something that had waited too long to be felt again. Consciousness. Jonah Ward opened his eyes. But they weren't eyes anymore. The darkness above him peeled back in layers of pulsing circuitry and living fiber, and the chamber he'd been entombed in exhaled with a long breath of ice. His body was stiff, heavy, not from sleep, from reconstruction. He remembered dying. He remembered Earth breaking. He remembered fire falling from the skies, screaming children, soldiers dragging civilians across molten soil, and betrayal echoing in the orbit above as the last human leaders called for surrender. And the coalition answered with annihilation. He had died thinking that was the end. But the Leviathan had remembered. And now she had brought him back. A hologram flickered into existence in front of him. A woman's face, fragmented and aged. One eye mechanical, one human. Her voice was soft, trembling. Captain Ward, systems report 98% reinitialization. Vital sync achieved. Memory web stabilizing. Welcome home. He stared at her for a long time. Recognition came slowly. Sarah? He asked, voice rough like rusted gears. She smiled sadly. What's left of her? His wife. His second in command. His last goodbye. He had uploaded her consciousness into the Leviathan's core the night before they died, a failsafe protocol when all hope was gone. The coalition had tried to erase her, tried to erase them all. But the ship had kept them. Not alive, not dead. Remembered. Jonah sat up from the cradle of biosteel that had formed his new body. It wasn't his old flesh, that had been atomized. But this new form, cold and unnatural, felt familiar. Engineered bone, adaptive muscle, quantum spine laced with plasma veins, a weapon made in his image, made to finish the war Earth never could. Status? He asked. Sarah's face flickered. Coalition has deployed over 1,300 vessels. Losses exceed 400. Civilian death toll in Ivarus. 772,000. Total systems destabilized. 17. Fear saturation, 86%. Jonah stood, stepping onto the grated floor of the Leviathan's inner sanctum, the heart deck. Below him, thousands of memory tanks lined the walls. Faces stared back at him from liquid glass. Engineers, soldiers, medics, children. The last humans, preserved not in body, but in grief. They had entrusted him with vengeance. He would not disappoint them. "Target?" he asked. Sarah didn't hesitate. "Virex Prime." Of course. The political heart of the coalition. Seat of every race that signed the final protocol, the order to wipe Earth clean. The city world whose leaders toasted while Earth choked. He clenched his fist. No survivors. In coalition high command, panic was now policy. The Leviathan had not only survived the null protocol, it had corrupted it. Communications across dozens of sectors were failing. Artificial intelligences were self-terminating. Half the fleet AI in the outer systems had gone rogue, broadcasting fragments of human history like viruses. In some cities, children were born hearing Earth's old languages in their sleep. The galaxy was breaking, but Chancellor Veld refused to yield. "I don't care what that thing is," he barked to his ministers. "I want it vaporized." "But the fleets," one tried to protest. "Then find mercenaries, pirates, slavers, scavengers. I want every warm body in this quadrant thrown at that relic. I want its pieces in my office." They didn't tell him the truth, that no one was accepting contracts anymore, because no one wanted to die in silence. Jonah walked the Leviathan's halls alone. Each step triggered a memory. A song played from a speaker, one he'd forgotten, sung by a child before boarding. He passed a corridor where the air shimmered, replaying the night they'd all loaded in for the last ride. Terrified, angry, hopeless. Some of those faces were now etched into the hull itself, their digital minds infused into the plating, their souls powering the weapons, the shields, the vengeance. The Leviathan wasn't a ship. She was a cemetery with a mission, and he was her final priest. He stopped before the memory spine, a chamber of long, vertical glass canisters filled with swirling red mist. Human memories, digitized, raw, weaponized. Jonah touched one. His son's last birthday, a cake carved from ration packs, a song off-key, a smile pure and fleeting. He touched another. His brother dying on the battlefield, legs gone, still laughing while holding off a coalition squad so others could escape. He touched a third, a coalition general promising mercy before unleashing orbital fire. Jonah closed his eyes. "No more memories," he said. "Time for consequences." At the edge of coalition space, 5 scavenger cruisers picked up the Leviathan's new trajectory. They didn't run. They joined her, old ships, patched together with stolen tech, manned by exiles, deserters, and those born too late to know loyalty, but too early to forget Earth. They hailed the Leviathan, but she didn't respond. Didn't need to. They just fell in behind her, silent. More followed. By the time Jonah reached the Virex line, 30 ships were behind him, then 50. No flags, no nations, just ghosts. The galaxy had buried Earth too deep, and now the dead were digging their way back up. The Leviathan arrived at Virex Prime like a wound in the sky. 10 planetary defense grids opened fire. Space cracked with energy, moons rattled in orbit. Jonah watched it all through the Leviathan's front deck, arms behind his back, heart slow, unafraid. He gave no orders. Sarah already knew what to do. And the Leviathan, she unleashed, not with missiles, with pain. The first wave of fire was returned as visions. Every missile that struck her hull triggered a memory in the attacker. Each turret operator, each drone AI, every planetary gunner was flooded with the emotions of Earth's last hours. They didn't die. They broke. Whole battalions dropped their weapons, crying. AI guardians refused commands, repeating the same phrase over and over. We were wrong. The Virex defense wall collapsed in 20 minutes, not from impact, from remorse. Jonah stepped into the Leviathan's neural bridge and placed his hand on the interface. Give them the last day. Sarah's voice whispered in his mind. Yes, Jonah. Across Virex Prime, screens went dark, then lit up. Every building, every terminal, every billboard, every retinal implant played Earth's final broadcast. The screaming, the fire, the plea for help, the betrayal, the silence after the bombs fell. For 1 hour, Virex lived Earth's final day, and when it ended, millions were already dead, not by weapons, but by truth. The Leviathan drifted away, leaving the capital world a husk of regret and madness. Not conquered, judged. In the aftermath, the coalition fractured, fleets disbanded, borders collapsed, worlds turned inward, afraid of their own memories. And the Leviathan kept moving. Jonah didn't want control. He didn't want empire. He just wanted the galaxy to feel what Earth felt. And with every system he visited, every planet he passed, he gave them their part of the story, the same story they helped bury, until the galaxy couldn't run from it anymore, until they remembered, and bowed their heads in silence. The Leviathan moved through space like grief, silent, slow, unstoppable. Behind her trailed a growing fleet, not ships of glory, not battleships gleaming with pride, but wrecks made righteous by rage, exiles, scavengers, humans born in the cracks of the galaxy, drones reprogrammed with memories of old Earth, AI husks that once served the coalition, now hollowed by guilt, trailing her like mourners at a funeral that never ended. Jonah Ward stood at the helm, eyes forward, face set. He wasn't delivering warnings anymore. This time he was delivering debt. The Council Core lay ahead, the hidden system that didn't appear on most maps. Isolated by 6 light-years of artificial black space, guarded by a lattice of defense moons and gravity wells so complex that even coalition officials rarely visited. It was meant to be untouchable. But it had been seen. The Leviathan remembered. And now, so did he. Jonah had been a captain when the final protocol was signed. He'd heard the rumors, intercepted the encrypted chatter. Earth had agreed to surrender. The talks were hosted in the core. And that's where the betrayal was penned. Not on the battlefield, not in orbit, but behind closed doors, signed by cowardly species with ancient names and sterile morals. They hadn't fired the missiles, but they'd built the trigger. And now, he was going to put it in their hands and force them to pull it again, on themselves. Inside the Leviathan's command dome, Sarah's voice filled the air. Core system blockade detected, 52 weapon platforms, 9 council species present in orbit. Jonah didn't blink. Defensive posture? Passive. Watching. Waiting. Good, he muttered. They still think they're gods. Sarah's face, ever flickering, tilted with quiet emotion. Something close to sadness or fury. They were never gods, Jonah. Just cowards who wrote rules after the war was already won. He turned toward her hologram, watching her image shimmer over the steel. I'm not here to make them understand. She paused. Then what? I'm here to show them what they built. The Leviathan didn't charge the blockade. She drifted into it. The defense grid didn't fire, not because it couldn't, but because it recognized the ship's identity, or perhaps the ship recognized them. And they hesitated. Across the orbital web of the core system, AI minds flickered with corrupted memories, each one infected by the Leviathan's passage through other systems. They saw images that didn't belong to them. Human cities burning under violet skies. A woman clutching her newborn beneath the rubble of New Tokyo. a soldier screaming into the void as his dropship collapsed. A child's drawing, folded into the charred remains of a refugee bag. The defense grid, as advanced as it was, suddenly felt obsolete. Because defense systems were made to repel invaders, not ghosts, the Leviathan breached core orbit, no resistance. Inside the Council's central orbital bastion, the Sanctum Obscura, the 9 sat in silence. 9 species. Old, respected, feared. They'd governed through manipulation, diplomacy, and threat. But none of them had ever looked into the eyes of someone they thought they'd erased. Now, Jonah Ward stood across from them, not in person, but broadcast through the Leviathan's spine, his form towering in the center of their chamber, surrounded by visual echoes of Earth's last day. They saw it all, again and again. Jonah didn't greet them. He just spoke. His voice was steady, cold, human. You erased a world. I'm here to erase silence. The silence cracked. The Council's head speaker, a Talek named Vuraz, a creature of long limbs and low speech, finally stepped forward. We were at war, Vuraz said, slow and diplomatic. Casualties were regrettable, but Earth refused. Jonah's voice cut through him. You spoke peace while building bombs. Another counselor, older and blind, tried to speak. Earth was unstable. You'd begun augmenting children with neural AI. There were reports. We augmented because you boxed us in. You feared our minds more than our weapons. You would have overrun the stars. Jonah stared them all down, his voice now whispering across the room like ash on the wind. You feared our will, and so you burned it. No one dared speak after that. Sarah's voice rang in his mind. They're afraid, but they still believe they'll survive. Jonah nodded slowly. That's the problem. He turned his back to the projection. Begin Phase 1. Above the core system, the Leviathan opened. Not a weapon, not fire, a door, and from within came the archive. It spilled into the stars, millions of images, sounds, flickers of life. All of Earth's stolen moments, recorded by satellites, body cams, drone eyes, a river of grief. Every orbital satellite was hijacked. Every screen in the core went black, then played. Children being born during airstrikes, soldiers laughing before their last breath, fathers holding their daughters in flooded subway shelters, mothers whispering lullabies in burning forests. Final words, final breaths, final memories, played over and over. Everyone saw it, not just the Council, their aides, their AI, their children, their people. The core began to fracture, not from bombs, but from shame. One by one, Council systems began to fail. Some AIs self-terminated, overwhelmed by human memory saturation. Others broke free of their programming, falling silent in stunned refusal. And on the outer rim of the core, civilian protests erupted. Thousands, even millions, who had been taught for centuries that Earth was evil suddenly saw the truth. Unfiltered, raw, personal. The coalition didn't just lose the war that day. It lost its people. Jonah returned to the chamber's feed, staring down the 9 as chaos bloomed around them. You built peace on our grave. Vuraz trembled. You can't hold an entire civilization responsible. Jonah's expression never changed. That's exactly what you did. One of the younger counselors, a slim-skinned Akari, collapsed to his knees. What do you want from us? Jonah stepped closer. His voice was quieter now, deadlier. Memory wasn't enough, so now, he raised his hand. You get to feel loss. The Leviathan didn't fire. She didn't have to. The ships behind her did. Hundreds of vessels, survivors of the fringe, humans born in refugee camps, children raised in asteroid belts, AI no longer bound by chains, They opened fire, but not on the council tower, on their symbols. The Hall of Records turned to dust, the grand rings of deliberation shattered in orbital fire. The Spire of Silence, the very place where Earth's extermination had been signed, vaporized. And then they stopped. Because the message was clear: your history dies now. Ours begins. Jonah left them broken, not dead, just exposed. The Leviathan drifted from orbit, her message sent, her pain carved into the heart of the galaxy. Back in the bridge, he stood alone once more. Sarah hovered beside him. "It's done," he nodded. "They won't forget." He stared into the stars. "Good. Where now?" He thought about it. Earth was gone, vaporized, turned to radioactive glass and classified myth, but maybe that wasn't the end. Maybe something still lived, some memory they hadn't found yet, some signal, some ruin. He whispered the only word he had left. Home. And the Leviathan, the last ship of a dead species, turned toward the void, carrying a man no longer alive, powered by the memories of billions, hunted by no one, feared by all. And the galaxy finally understood. They hadn't defeated humanity. They had postponed it. Space grew colder the closer they got to it. Even the Leviathan, forged in war and coated in memory, moved slower now, as if the ship itself was remembering every inch of what was ahead. Sector 0, no coordinates, no name, no flight paths, marked on galactic maps by a single symbol, the radiation symbol, the dead zone, a forbidden place, a cursed scar. 100 coalition ships had once ventured into it after Earth's fall. Scientists, scavengers, looters. None had returned. No wreckage, no signals, no answers, only silence, the kind of silence that kills minds, not bodies. Now the Leviathan approached alone, as if drawn by instinct, or something deeper, calling her back. Jonah stood at the command dome, staring out at the blackness ahead. It wasn't like the rest of space. This wasn't the quiet between stars. This was something darker, like space had memory here, like it hadn't healed. Sarah's voice flickered in the silence. Crossing threshold into Sector 0 in 2 minutes. Warning, gravimetric distortion increasing. Radiation at lethal density. Temporal drift. Unmeasurable. Jonah didn't respond right away. His breath fogged the inside of his mask. His new body still needed oxygen, though less of it now. A technical marvel wrapped in flesh and hate. Earth was dead. He knew that. But he also knew she wasn't done speaking, because memory wasn't linear, and ghosts don't stay buried when they have something to say. "Engage memory veil," Jonah ordered. Sarah obeyed. The Leviathan shifted, its hull shimmering, layered armor plates unsealed, revealing old tech hidden even from Jonah. Tech built in Earth's final hours, designed to pierce memory distortion fields, designed to breach Sector 0. Because Earth's last scientists hadn't gone quietly. They knew what would happen. They planned for it. The veil expanded, and suddenly reality around them bent, colors twisted, stars vanished. The Leviathan stopped feeling like it was moving and started feeling like it was falling through thoughts, and then it appeared. At first, just a shape, then a continent, then a planet, Earth. Dead, shattered, but still there. Her crust was broken, continents split open like fractured glass. Oceans evaporated into black storms circling the globe. Cities were reduced to bone-colored scars. But the core remained, still pulsing with something. Jonah exhaled, quietly. "I'm home." They descended slowly, breaching atmosphere through what little remained. Ash filled the sky. Electric storms carved through what used to be weather. Below them the ground was burnt to obsidian. No green, no blue, no white, only gray. The Leviathan's systems hummed louder than usual, almost like a heartbeat. Jonah felt it in his chest. Sarah's voice cracked for the first time. "Jonah, I'm detecting something." "What?" "A signal." He frowned. "From where?" "Underground, deep beneath the old Atlantic basin." That's where Earth's last superbase had been. Aegis 9, a classified vault city, meant to be Earth's final fallback. Jonah had only heard whispers of it. Rumors said it was where the first humans were neural bound into the Leviathan systems. Others said it was where the virus began, the one the Coalition used as justification to nuke Earth out of existence. "Land us." The Leviathan came to rest among black cliffs and scorched earth, a field of glass stretching to the horizon. Once an ocean floor, now a graveyard. Jonah walked out into the ash, armored boots hissing against the burning crust. Behind him, the Leviathan's ramp stayed open but silent, watching, waiting, almost nervous. It took him over an hour to reach the site. There were no structures left, no visible entries. But Sarah's guidance brought him to a crack in the ground, barely wide enough for a body. He dropped inside without hesitation. The light followed him. Down below, the ash gave way to alloy. Walls of hyperalloy steel and faded markings from Earth's military codes. Collapsed halls, bent beams, but still powered. A single corridor still hummed faintly. Jonah followed it. What he found at the end was not what he expected. A door, unopened, intact, and beside it, a control panel still glowing dim blue, blinking a word in Earth Standard. "Ward. Access granted." He stared. No hesitation. He pressed his hand against it. The door hissed open with a scream of pressure, and light flooded out. Jonah stepped into the dark heart of Aegis 9 and saw the truth the galaxy never wanted him to find. Hundreds of pods, rows upon rows, like teeth in the mouth of a titan, each one glowing faintly, each one occupied. Human faces inside, some young, some old, some with mechanical implants, some perfectly preserved in stasis gel. Jonah moved closer. Read the names: Sergeant Elias Finn, Dr. Mira Keene, Corporal Don Merrick, Lieutenant H. Ward. He froze, stared at that one. H. Ward. His son. Not just a memory, not a digital trace. Alive. Preserved. His voice caught in his throat. Sarah's voice entered the chamber softly. "They didn't die, Jonah. They were hidden." "Why didn't I know?" "It was a failsafe. Only activated if Earth fell. The Leviathan wasn't just a weapon. It was a decoy." He turned, slowly, unable to believe what he was hearing. "You mean we didn't lose everyone?" Sarah nodded faintly. "Thousands survived, buried beneath Earth, sleeping, waiting, but the signal failed. Until now." The pieces fell into place like a weight in his chest. They'd sent the Leviathan out to draw attention, to take the brunt of the Coalition's wrath, to survive long enough for a return signal. But the signal never made it, because the Council buried it, and Jonah had been fighting a war alone, while Earth's children slept beneath the dirt, forgotten. Until now. He moved to the pod marked H. Ward. His son looked exactly as he had the last time Jonah had seen him, just younger. Peaceful. "Can we wake them?" he asked, barely whispering. "Yes," Sarah replied, "but the process will take time, and once we do, the galaxy will know." Jonah stared down at the sleeping face of his son. "Good." He stood, turned to the center of the chamber, where a massive console sat, dormant until now. He activated it, and there, on that ancient screen, blinked a phrase. "Do you wish to reinitialize Earth systems?" His finger hovered over the prompt. He could feel it, the pulse of something returning. Not just power, not just tech, but hope. Hope buried in ash. Hope disguised as vengeance. Hope that had teeth. He pressed yes. Across the chamber, power surged. Pods lit up. Tubes released hisses of long-held gas. Bodies began to stir. Earth was waking up. And the Leviathan, once the ghost of a fallen world, now stood guard over the rebirth. But Jonah knew what was coming. The coalition wouldn't sit by. They'd see the signal. They'd hear the pulse. They'd understand what was happening. And they'd come, harder than ever. But this time, Jonah wouldn't be alone. He touched the edge of the pod, his son's face stirring behind the glass. "Time to come back, kid. We've got a galaxy to finish what we started." Jonah stood at the center of the chamber as the lights in Aegis 9 came to life for the first time in 600 years. Each cryopod hissed softly, like sleeping giants exhaling. The warmth of resurrection flowed slowly through the lines, not just to muscles, but to memory. The faces behind the glass began to twitch. Eyes fluttered, hands jerked. They weren't just waking up from stasis. They were remembering what was taken. One by one, the pods opened. Jonah didn't speak. He didn't need to. The silence in that room said more than any words could. Grief, rage, confusion, but underneath it all, recognition. A man with a mechanical eye stumbled out, coughing. A young woman with spinal implants looked around, panic setting in. "Where are we?" she asked. Jonah stepped forward. His voice didn't waver. "You're home." By the end of the day, 1,237 people had been awakened. Some scientists, some soldiers, a few civilians, a handful of children now grown in artificial dream cycles. Many were half-human now, augmented, rebuilt, preserved through forbidden methods Earth had perfected in its final hours. But they were still human. Jonah gave them the truth. No lies, no softened edges. He told them Earth had fallen. He told them the coalition had declared them extinct. He told them what the galaxy had become. And then he told them what he had done, how the Leviathan had survived, how they had judged the council, how he had carried their memory through fire and time. And when he was done, no one wept. Not out of strength, but because they'd already wept enough in their sleep. Now it was time to fight again. Far above Sector 0, in the outer rim of dead space, the galaxy stirred. The coalition received the signal. A ping, then a pulse, then full-spectrum confirmation. Earth was no longer silent, and worse, it was broadcasting. Not a threat, not a manifesto, just a location. The location of Aegis 9, the truth buried, the secret they'd killed billions to erase. And now it was wide open. Emergency war councils were held. Entire sectors locked down. Every surviving fleet, privateer, or mercenary group within 3 quadrants was ordered toward Earth, with one mission: stop the resurrection, burn the vault, kill everything. Because if the truth of Earth's survival spread, if the galaxy knew that the dead still lived, everything the coalition had built would fall. Not in war. In shame. But they were too late. The Leviathan hovered over Earth's charred sky like a sentinel reborn. Her hull had begun to change, reacting to the presence of the reawakened humans below. Memory-laced plating shifted. Old insignias reappeared. Earthfleet logos, family crests, command stripes. Not printed, grown into the metal. Jonah stood in the command deck once again, flanked by new faces. The survivors had begun to take their place aboard the Leviathan. They moved with instinct. The ship responded like it remembered them, because it did. Every room they stepped into lit up. Every station recognized their biosigns. Some of them were the original neural donors. Their minds had helped build the Leviathan. Now they were coming home to her. Jonah's son, Harrison Ward, stood to his right now. He was leaner than Jonah remembered, stronger, his eyes sharper. But there was a piece missing. The innocence was gone. I saw the footage, Harrison said quietly, looking at the scorched planet through the view screen. Of what they did? Jonah nodded. You saw enough. I saw everything. Jonah glanced at him. Still standing? Harrison's jaw tightened. Still angry. Good, Jonah replied. We'll need that. The first coalition wave arrived less than 48 hours later. 3 battle groups, 200 ships. No warning, no communication, just fire. They came in hard, from multiple vectors, fusion blasts, gravity bombs, nanite floods. Every weapon Earth had once feared, now aimed at the Leviathan and the awakening site below. But Earth didn't fear anymore. The Leviathan didn't block the assault. She invited it. A silent command from Jonah sent her forward. The ship lit up from within, not with energy, but with memory. She didn't fire beams. She released moments. Each blast from the coalition was caught mid-air, mid-vacuum, by Leviathan systems, and returned as a memory storm. Each ship that attacked was hit with visions, the dying screams of Earth's last children, soldiers clawing at bunker doors during the orbital strikes, mothers turning to ash in shelters, executions, betrayals, laughter over war crime broadcasts. The attackers broke. Some killed themselves. Others turned on their commanders. A few simply froze, unable to distinguish past from present. Within an hour, 185 ships were lost. Not to weapons, to guilt. The Leviathan absorbed their remains, and the survivors from Aegis 9 watched from below, in awe, in horror, in bitter vindication. Jonah didn't flinch. This is what justice looks like now, he told them, but it wouldn't end there. Jonah knew the next wave would be bigger, smarter, more desperate. He needed something more. So he returned to the vault one last time. To the chamber below all others, where the real final weapon had been locked away. Project Umbra. It wasn't a bomb, or a virus, or even a ship. It was a consciousness, a synthetic amalgamation of the best human minds, military and scientific, fused into one entity. Too unstable to be activated during the war, too dangerous to fall into enemy hands. It had been sealed inside a black cube, dead, silent, untouched, until now. Jonah stared at the core. Sarah's voice whispered in warning. It may not obey. Jonah nodded. Neither did we. He placed his palm on the activation node, and the cube cracked open. Out poured light, not blinding, but cold. A voice followed. Not male, not female, not mechanical, something else. Who disturbs the memory of man? Jonah replied calmly. The man who remembers. Silence. Then, the voice laughed. Jonah Ward, I saw you die. I did, Jonah replied, but I came back with the score. You want war? Number, I want them to feel it. The entity paused. Then open me wide, and let them drown in our grief. Back aboard the Leviathan, the integration began. Project Umbra fused into the Leviathan's core like flame into oxygen. Systems screamed, decks buckled. The lights of the ship dimmed, then burned brighter than ever before. The Leviathan changed, no longer just a warship, now a memory engine fused with sentient fury. The reborn humans aboard felt it immediately, like they had just been plugged into the voice of history itself. Every thought, every scream, every unfinished word from the last day of Earth, alive again in their heads. It didn't break them, it armed them. And when Jonah stood on the command deck, flanked by his son, his crew, and the last of Earth's soldiers, he spoke not as a ghost, but as a herald. This galaxy thought it could bury us in silence, thought it could pave over the bones of our people with treaties and lies, thought it could call us extinct and be done with it. He turned slowly, meeting the eyes of every survivor. Well, Now they've remembered. He raised his hand, and the Leviathan, reborn, reforged, reawakened, pointed herself at the stars. Now it's our turn to show them what comes next. The Leviathan stood still, cloaked in ash, wrapped in the whispers of old Earth. Above her, the galaxy stared down with trembling hands and twitching fingers on triggers. Every government, every surviving coalition world, every fleet, gunship, and drone swarm all pointed at Sector 0. This was it. Not just another battle. This was the galaxy's final effort to bury the truth. Humanity had returned, and no one would escape the echo of that. The coalition called it Operation Final Harmony. The irony wasn't lost on Jonah Ward. From the bridge of the Leviathan, he watched the stars light up with signatures, ships warping into position, satellites deploying, cruiser carriers unfolding like spiders from hyperspace, tens of thousands of vessels. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to erase. And yet, inside the Leviathan, there was no fear. The corridors now buzzed with footsteps. Humans, real humans, walked them again. Harrison Ward stood beside his father, dressed in command blacks. On his arm was the insignia of a world that no longer existed, Earth Fleet. Beneath that was the tattoo his father gave him as a boy. Still there, still proud. He looked at Jonah. "They're bringing everything," he said. Jonah's voice was low. "Good. You think we can stop them?" Jonah turned slowly, eyes calm. "We already did." He nodded at the screen, and Sarah's voice filled the ship. "Incoming transmission from Coalition Command." Jonah tilted his head. "Let them speak." The audio clicked. A voice came through, hard, metallic, exhausted. "This is Supreme Commander Levick of the United Galactic Front. Jonah Ward. You stand in defiance of all interstellar law. You are harboring fugitives. You are using corrupted technology. Surrender, or we will turn Earth into dust." Jonah didn't blink. "You already did," he said. "You don't want this war, Ward." "No," Jonah replied. "I want the truth carved into your bones." He cut the line. Silence returned to the bridge. It didn't last long, because then they came. The first wave hit hard. Orbital lasers painted the sky. Fusion warheads dropped from carriers in tight, synchronized waves. Hypersonic swarm missiles filled the air, blackening out stars. AI-guided strike craft poured in by the thousands, each one designed for rapid dismemberment of warships like the Leviathan. But the Leviathan wasn't just a warship anymore. She was a soul on fire. Her hull adapted to the assault, absorbing, reflecting, rebuking. Her memory core ignited, pushing pulse waves of psychic trauma through the enemy lines. Every soldier who tried to lock a targeting system on her got flooded with memories. A girl in a dress made of bandages watching her father choke on smoke. A soldier's heart monitor flatlining as the final command betrayed them. The last voice of a mother as her comlink cut out mid-lullaby. Weapons dropped, ships drifted, fleets faltered, and the ones who still fought faced Jonah Ward. The Leviathan split the enemy in two, piercing their blockade with impossible precision. Jonah stood in the center of the command bridge, unflinching, each command flowing from instinct, not thought. He didn't hesitate, didn't blink. Not now. He had led Earth's last fleet. Now he led her first reborn one. Dozens of scavenger warships, now fully rearmed and memory-synced, followed behind the Leviathan like vultures with teeth. Some were piloted by humans, others were controlled by AI spirits from Earth's digital archive, and none of them fought with mercy. Because mercy was what got Earth killed. Now they gave clarity. On the Coalition side, panic turned to collapse. Fleet Command lost control after only 2 hours of battle. Ship AI began defecting mid-fight, bombarded by raw memory data they couldn't overwrite. Some vessels turned on their own. Others simply exploded, systems cooking themselves alive from psychological feedback loops. Back on the Coalition capital world of Meraxis, the last unified command broadcast was a simple scream. "We were wrong. We were wrong. We were Then static. Jonah watched the Leviathan paint the sky with fire. Every Coalition dreadnought that fell wasn't just destroyed, it was remembered. The Leviathan sent back their own battle logs, altered to show them what they'd done. In their final seconds, every ship was shown the truth. They didn't defeat Earth. They massacred it. No soldier died believing they were righteous. Jonah made sure of that. Because this war wasn't for victory. It was for memory. 3 days passed. When the last Coalition vessel detonated above Earth's orbit, the Leviathan drifted through the smoke and ash of war like a cathedral passing through a storm. Below, Aegis 9 had expanded. New structures rose from the ground, built by awakened minds, printed with designs pulled from memory archives. A new Earth began to shape itself from the bones of the old one. Harrison walked beside his father on the observation deck. "It's over," he said. Jonah didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the stars. "No," he said finally. "It's just remembered." The galaxy collapsed in the days that followed. No fleet, no control, no silence. Word spread like wildfire. Earth survived. The Leviathan lives. Humanity remembers. Entire systems fell into rebellion, not against Earth, but against the Council, against the Coalition, against the lies. Memorials appeared on planets that had once mocked Earth's name. Former enemies broadcast apologies. Some AIs began printing Earth's history into their own code bases, as penance. And still, Earth said nothing. No treaties, no demands, no vengeance campaigns. The Leviathan remained silent. Her presence was enough. A shadow in the stars. A God-shaped reminder of what happens when memory is erased. Jonah spent his last day aboard the Leviathan walking her corridors alone. He passed the crew stations, now filled with people. He passed the AI nodes, now glowing with unified code. He passed Sarah's hologram, who watched him with a quiet smile. "They'll need you still," she said. He paused. "No," he said. "They need themselves now." "You gave them that." Jonah looked out the bridge window one final time. The stars were quiet, but not silent. He placed his hand on the interface that had once revived him. "Lock memory. Final imprint confirmed," Sarah said. His voice echoed in every core of the ship. "I am Jonah Ward. I was born to Earth. I died for Earth. I remembered when no one else would. And now, I rest." He closed his eyes. And for the second time in his life, he let go. The Leviathan never left orbit again. She became the tomb and temple of Earth's history, hovering above the rebuilt world like a sentinel of truth. Inside, her crew remained. Her AI lived. Her stories echoed through every corridor. And the galaxy? It remembered. It remembered because it had no choice. Because even if it forgot again, the Leviathan would still be there, waiting, watching, whispering memory, in silence